speaker for today. So without any delays, please, I hope that you enjoyed self-care if you dare.
Thank you, Agata. So thank you for taking your time to be with us today. I do recognize that you have many other things you could, and right now may even be saying to yourself, should be doing. Should be doing. So please know how much I appreciate the time that you are investing to spend with us on this webinar. And with your help, I will endeavor to make every moment worth it. Agata's already introduced me, but now I'd like to know who's with us today. So please take just a moment and respond to this poll. So if you could just mark what is your role, this idea who's joining us today. All right. Another couple seconds and then we're going to go ahead and close the poll. Looks like the majority that are with us today are advocates, either community-based or system-based. So again, thank you very much for joining us. Now the other thing we'd like to know is how long have you been doing what you're doing? So please take a moment and share that with us. We have those rookies in the room, less than 6 months. Those who've been with us just a little bit longer. And maybe we'll have some of those, wow, look at that, 60% that have been with us for 5 years or clearly you guys would have a lot to share about self-care and certainly know how important it is. So the fact that you're even willing to take your time to be here today and share this webinar with us means even more. Last but not least, I'd love to know what it is you're thinking right now about this webinar. So please share those thoughts. And I don't know who you are, so feel free to be honest. All right, just a couple more seconds. So I am glad to see that the majority of you are excited to learn something new, even if it's just one thing. I always think when attending a training, even if it's a topic you know about, that it's good, and if you can walk away with one thing or reminder or something that you can change a little bit in your life, that's a good thing. So I'm glad a lot of you feel that same way, and I like that you like the title too. Thanks for that. So now, a little bit about me. First of all, I love frogs. Next, I am a Colorado native. I'm an avid trail runner, pet sitter extraordinaire, and have an incredible daughter who just graduated with a degree in finance with honors this past weekend. I've been in the domestic violence field for 9+ years, starting first as a volunteer, where I did the majority of my volunteering in a legal program, and then helping out with fun events when I could. I then worked as the interim legal advocate and then as the volunteer and training program manager for 3 years. I've now been with CCADV since the middle of October, and as Agata said, we are partners. Our office is right next door to CCASA. It's a privilege being able to work with the staff at CCADV as well as CCASA, and again, I'm really honored and excited about the opportunity to share with all of you today with Self-Care If You Dare. I will tell you, this is my first time presenting in this format, via a webinar where I can't see you, and I'm relying entirely on this PowerPoint or slideshow for much of the communication. And let's face it, I'm sure you've all attended presentations. Most presentations we see, PowerPoints tend to leave a lot to be desired. So I've done my best to make sure that our time together today is different. As they mentioned in the beginning, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box or in the chat box. We'll have a few more polls, and there'll also be an opportunity for you to share some thoughts in the chat box a little bit later. The challenge of sharing this information and endeavoring to engage in a discussion with an audience that I cannot physically see has pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I thank you for sharing this with me. But right now, I would love to have you all use your little raise hand bar next to your name where you can raise your hand and ask if you would please raise your hand if you agree that self-care has become the buzzword or something that we hear so often in our field that perhaps we could even say it's lost a bit of its meaning. Do we have any that feel that way? Yeah, so we have some who do feel that way. And I just want to say that today, an important thing is in our time together, it is important for us to recognize how important it is to be truly mindful of self-care. It's important that we make that a priority and that we even dare ourselves and others to make it that priority. So what is self-care? According to dictionary.com, it is the care of self without medical or other professional consultation. I'm sure that many of you would agree with me that since we work in the nonprofit field, money for medical or professional consultation can be a bit of a challenge. I am smiling and shaking my head while saying this, and I hope that you are too. Yet, this definition highlights a really important point. We as individuals are responsible for our self-care. The most important part of self-care is being self-aware and an understanding that an important component of self-care is our personal commitment to self-development and preservation. We are all going to change doing this work, but it's up to us what that change looks like. So it's really important that we take a very mindful, proactive approach. Let's discuss 3 simple steps that can be done on a daily basis. First, when you start work every day, get yourself in the right mindset. As you're heading to work, shift from family responsibilities, personal life, everything that's going on in the world, and come into your work. Be grateful for the fact that you have the opportunity to do this work because you know what? Not everyone can. And not everyone would. Be grateful that you can serve those affected by sexual assault or other violence in their lives. And again, recognize the fact that not everyone can do what you do. So if it's mindful, if it's grateful, if it's expressing appreciation or a blessing, whatever it is that you can relate to, use that and start your day with it. Set an intention and move forward with that. This may sound so simple, but it actually does require effort on your part to get in that right mindset and set that intention for the day. Initially, it might take you a couple of minutes of thinking about it as you're heading to work or walking into work, to where you begin to make it a practice, and it can be something that takes a few seconds. But the self-awareness that you start your day with is vital. It's important that we also think about how we define success in this work and recognize our role. Success cannot be about the outcomes of those we work with. It is about the fact that you were there. Your presence. Let me repeat that. In advocacy, it's about your presence. The fact that you were there for someone, listened without judgment, provided support, walked alongside them. This is success in advocacy work. Obviously, we all know there's a lot more to what we do when it comes right down to it. But again, when defining success, it's your presence and being there to support someone experiencing trauma. If for some reason at this point in time you've already checked out, maybe you're checking your emails, or you're looking at something else online, writing a note that's unrelated to this self-care webinar, I'm going to ask that you please stop for just a moment and sit with this. Your presence in the work that we do is vital, and it is how we can define success at the end of every day. Give yourself space right now to feel that. Embrace that. Because the strength that can come from that is very empowering and does so much for self-care. At the close of the day, or how we close our day, is important as well. We need to make sure that we process it and close our workday. You remember that mindset that you began the day with? Now you're going to end the day with that. Whether it was being mindful, grateful, appreciative, blessed, whatever it is that resonates with you. And recognize again that your day was a success because of your presence, listening without judgment, providing support, and walking alongside those you serve. On your trip home, make time to focus on that. I invite you to turn the radio off. Don't be texting while driving, or making phone calls, or already thinking about the night ahead and all that you have to do. No, take just a few moments, and depending on how long your commute is, your few moments might be a little bit longer than others, but no matter what it is, give yourself time to process and close the day. After you've done whatever it is that resonates with you, take a deep breath or two and leave it. Give yourself a little space, and now get ready to engage in what lays ahead of you. Picking up kids, making dinner, homework for you or the kids, or both, night with girlfriends, whatever it is. Now that you've closed your day, you can fully engage in that. Those 3 steps sound so simple, and some of you may be thinking that right now, yet they require a tremendous amount of attention on our part. Because you see, self-care is something that we do actively. It is a practice, not a habit. A habit is an unconscious, repetitive act, like brushing your teeth or biting your nails. A practice is intentional. It is conscious behavior with a purpose. So now that we have these 3 steps to practice, as we start our workday, engage in our workday, and end in our workday, but we all know there's probably more. So let's start first with a poll to lead us into this next part of our discussion. You're going to share with us a few of your favorite things. So take just a moment. All right, we have a lot of people answering. I knew pajamas would probably be a big one. Many of you probably recognize that raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, right? So we'll go ahead and close that poll, and let's see where everyone stands with that. So it looks like we had a lot enjoying their pajamas. I actually am super impressed that some people mark stats as their favorite thing, so this next piece that we talk about, you're going to really enjoy that too. And we're going to use that to lead right into what we're talking about. Because in that poll, it is, again, I'm impressed that many of you mark stats. I'd actually like to visit with you and learn how you can do that, because they are definitely not a favorite thing in the work that I do. But the thing we have to recognize is they are a piece of the puzzle that makes it whole. And they are necessary in the work that we do, right? So now we've shifted from the part of the important piece of the work that we do in advocacy is our presence, to some of those mundane things and those tedious things that we don't always enjoy doing but still have to do. And stats is definitely one of those things. So those, along with other things that we have to do, I invite you to recognize the important role that stats or reports play in the work that we do. and begin to attach value to those things. No, that doesn't mean it's going to be fun. But again, we must find a way to attach value to those things and recognize the role they play in the work that we do. Because those things, along with getting involved in lobbying for our cause, other anti-violence work, and movement building, all contribute to the work that we're able to do every day. Are there days when we feel like we're doing more of those mundane tasks than helping? Sure. But if we can attach meaning to those tasks and recognize that they are an important piece of this puzzle that contributes to the overall work we do, this can help with the mindset that we have towards them. On a side note, and this is something I try and do for myself, perhaps it can even motivate us to do them on a more consistent basis so that we're not in a rush at the end of the month or the quarter or, heaven forbid, the end of the year. Instead, we schedule time and we give them the space and time that they need and engage with them on a daily, weekly, or bi-weekly basis so they don't become this overwhelming task that we hate at the end of the month. And again, please know as I share this with you, I'm talking a lot to myself. Another important component of self-care is advocating for you. Whether this is at work or with your family or with your friends. Ask for what you need. If you're going to share something with someone, and I think this is a really important thing, so maybe you've had something happen and you're going to share it with someone important in your life, a partner, a friend, or another family member, and you want a certain response, then tell them that before you even start sharing it. Say, hey, I'm going to tell you about something that happened today or an interaction that I had, and when I'm done, all I want from you is, and you fill in the blank. Because we all know that many times well-intentioned loved ones in our lives say or do things that really didn't work for us. They didn't mean it in a bad way, but they can't read our minds and they don't know what to do. So instead, let's put the odds in their favor and let's also help ourselves out. Tell them what you want. Tell them what you need. When we do that, we also need to be willing to accept that those around us may not always be able to give us what it is that we need, and we have to be okay with that. Don't judge or get angry with them, but instead decide then to discover it for yourself or find ways to surround yourself with those who can support you and provide what you need. When it comes to self-care, another important thing to realize is this work that we do requires strength. It requires a tremendous amount of strength. So there are going to be times when you're asking for something and you might not get it. Can you move on without it? Can you dig deep and find the strength in you to handle it? What can inspire the strength that we might need but feel we're lacking? Think of those that we serve. The strength that survivors display and share with us on a daily basis, wow, can much more be inspiring than that. The fact that we have the opportunity to work with them and at the same time learn so much from them. In addition, being inspired by those that we work with who share this same vision that we do for an end to violence for all people and who are endeavoring to make things better for those that they serve, we can get strength from those as well. In your workplace, endeavor to create an environment where all advocates, volunteers, admin, and yes, even those in supervisory roles can advocate for themselves and ask for what they need. Eliminate things in your life that are triggering. We work in a field that's filled with trauma. So why do we go home and watch Snapped or Law and Order SVU or other TV shows like that? CSI. Think about the news. Do you watch it? Do you listen to it? Do you read it? Do you need to? And if you do, then figure out the way to watch the news or pay attention to the news that can prove to be the least triggering for you. Social media. Oh boy, here is a big one. We tend to surround ourselves with those who are like us. So it's likely that your friends are posting things about social injustice, oppression, violence against women, and so much more, especially in our current climate. I know it seems like you do, but trust me, you don't. Your friends will be okay. You'll be okay. You don't have to read and like everything. Set some boundaries for yourself. Limit yourself to a posting or two. If they're work-related, perhaps forward them to work and read it when you're at work. Again, if it's relevant to the work that you're doing. But even with that, set some boundaries for yourself. Spending time with coworkers outside of work is often part of self-care for many of us. Now, you may not be skydiving together, but whatever you're doing, set a limit on how much time you spend talking about work or social injustice. And definitely, don't start talking poorly about other coworkers who aren't there. It's okay if you need to process some things that happened that day at work or that are going on that week that you're struggling with. It's okay to process about some of the things that are going on in the world right now. But again, set a limit for yourselves. Set some boundaries and hold one another accountable into that. Engage in it for a certain amount of time and then start a different conversation. Sometimes when we do this work, we feel like we have to be focused on this work or injustice all the time. And the fact is, we can't. And it's okay not to be. No one can do that. It's exhausting. So if spending time with coworkers, limit talk about work or social injustices and enjoy one another. Another really important thing in self-care is paying attention to how we talk to ourselves. Most of us say things to ourselves that we would never say to others, especially those we serve. I'd like to ask you all a question right now. Have you ever made a decision that didn't turn out exactly like you thought it would or hoped it would? Maybe made a mistake. I can't see you, but I feel you shaking your heads and going, yep, that's happened, and that's exactly what I'm doing as I sit here too. We all know we've made mistakes or decisions that didn't turn out exactly like we wanted. But the next piece to this is, think how often when replaying that, you say things like, man, Shannon, that was so stupid. Well, you probably don't say, man, Shannon, unless your name is Shannon, but you say to yourself, man, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? Now, let me ask you, no matter how many times in your life that you've asked yourself why regarding a certain decision that you've made, did it ever change the decision? I feel you shaking your heads no. Did it change the consequences of it? Again, we're all shaking our heads no. So let's stop beating ourselves up. We wouldn't let those that we work with do that. We encourage them to take the word why out of their vocabulary, and we certainly never use it when visiting with them. So why do we think it's okay to do it with ourselves? Stop beating yourself up and treat yourself gently and with the compassion that you give to those you serve and those in your life that you love. So now we want to spend a couple of minutes discussing some signs or maybe red flags of vicarious trauma. Things that you know you need to start to watch out for. So if you would, in your chat box, so that everyone can see, and feel free to share them with the entire audience. Go ahead and type in there some signs or red flags of vicarious trauma that you can think of. So type them into the chat box. So we've got withdrawal, nightmares, stomach in knots. That's kind of how mine was at about 1 o'clock today, but I'm feeling a little bit better now thanks to all of you. Short temper with family, definitely. How about just being irritable with our family, right? Always feeling ill, absolutely. What else can you think of? Irritable with coworkers. Exhaustion, anxiety, depression, headaches. Not wanting to talk to anyone after work. That's a really big one, right? Being forgetful. Yeah. These are all definitely, and feel free to keep typing them in if you have others to share. Here's a list of some things, and actually a lot of these are ones that all of you mentioned. Notice that one about even maybe feeling inadequate and having a low work satisfaction. Kind of someone mentioned something about like feeling defeated and not knowing why. And that's definitely something that could tie into here. Not finding things that really bring us joy anymore. So when the day comes that I see a frog and it no longer makes me smile or my heart beat, then I know there's a problem, right? Not being able to remain empathetic is an important thing too. Perhaps we begin to question, why did we choose this line of work? Should we be in this line of work, right? Might be something that comes up. Another big one here too is blaming others, right, for lack of time or commitment. So perhaps we come home and we have family there or a partner, and instead of, and especially if we haven't gotten ourselves into that practice yet of processing and closing our day, then we could come home and take it out on them, right? And many of you actually mentioned those sorts of things. Abusing drugs, alcohol, or food. And certainly another important one, especially for those who work in sexual assault, is a change in your personal sexual behavior, especially if you start to notice a decrease or an aversion to sex. So these would all be things that we'd want to watch out for. Here's the thing about red flags and why we put these here. And thank you all so much for sharing. That was awesome to have your participation with that. If we're to the point where we're showing these things, we're already in it. So we're taking these couple of minutes now to have this conversation and to look at these red flags, because we all already have a tendency toward some of these things, just based on our personalities and how we are. We may already kind of be the sort of person who sometimes is edgy or irritable. We might be someone who gets headaches or maybe suffers with some physical kind of things. We may be someone who drinks a bottle of wine, a glass of wine, right? So we have to recognize that we already have a tendency towards a lot of those things that we said. The reason it's important for us to recognize that is because once it gets to this point where it's really affecting our lives, it's gone too far. But chances are where it's going to start to affect us is those areas where we already have that tendency. Because it's going to affect us in those areas where we already have that tendency, it is then also natural human behavior to blow it off, to push it aside, to not recognize it. Do you see how dangerous something like that could be? So take some time and think about the things that you chatted in, things that others chatted in, what we have on this list, even things we didn't mention. And identify for yourself things that you have a tendency towards already, and consistently do a self-check and be proactive with yourself. It's something that's scary to do, but very important. So let's take a moment now and talk about the little things. Whether it's veggie chips, so you can claim you're eating your vegetables. It's snow. A lot of you like those snowy days so you can hang out in your pajamas, or whatever the weather is doing. It's nature, it's silliness, it's animals, it's your bed. Cherish them. I'm going to sound like everyone's mom right here, but I'm going to say drink water every day. Most of us spend our day drinking coffee, soda, tea. Red Bull is mine, or other things. So make sure you're drinking water. It sounds so simple, but it is such an important part of self-care. Get up and move. Think about how often you're sitting at your desk for an hour. I mean, we've already been here for at least 30 minutes, right? Or more. I remember times sitting in my office so still at my computer that my light would actually go off because there'd been no movement in the office. That's definitely a sign that it's time to get up and move. But again, it's a little bit too late. So do some jumping jacks in your office, or take a quick stroll through your building or to the bathroom, or a quick walk around the block. Whatever it is, just move. Breathe. You know, this is one of those things we don't have to think about. It's a habit. Thank goodness we're all here and don't have to think about it. But really giving some thought to taking some deep breaths. We talked about it as you set your intention for the day when it starts. It's certainly something that during the day when things maybe get a little hectic, or for those of you who don't love doing stats or working on stats, you need to go back to. And as you close your day, be aware of your breath. Take some deep breaths and focus on that. Enjoy nature. We are surrounded by devices, bombarded with digital everything. We're stuck inside many times all day, and then when we have an opportunity to get away from it, what do? We play on our phone. So I encourage you, unplug. Now if that really scares you, unplug for a couple of minutes and then go ahead and do it again until you can grow that time a little bit longer. But unplug. Take time to get back in touch with you, with nature, and all that's good. Self-care and the personal strength you develop because of practicing self-care is vital in this work. Self-care is what makes you available for what matters most. And really, it's up to us as individuals. Let's do a quick poll right now and see if we're all on the same page. Take just a moment and share your thoughts. Self-care is whose responsibility? There are definitely people on this list that we would like to make responsible for taking care of us, right? Wherever it is that we're at in our life, whether it's work or at home. But we all know, and look at that, we are all on the same page. It is our responsibility. Going back to that thing of asking ourselves why, when we had this title of Self-Care If You Dare, again, it's one of those things where often we maybe feel guilty about taking the time to do it. And so it is daring. Not really that other people are going to judge us for doing things to take care of ourselves. It's that we're judging us or making ourselves feel bad for doing things to take care of ourselves. But as we've talked about today, there's some really simple things that we can put into our lives and make a practice, something that we do consciously that can help us be able to continue to do this work with so much more enjoyment, help us be able to enjoy our lives outside of work so much more, and help us to feel better as an individual. So we do realize that it is our responsibility. And again, if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we cannot fully engage in our lives. Those moments with ourselves, friends, and family that matter most. You also cannot fully serve those that you're working with. Your fellow co-workers and those that are affected by sexual assault or other violence or oppression. So I invite you all to take the plunge and actively engage in self-care on a daily basis. We have one final poll we'd like to share and get your last thoughts on. So if you'll take just a couple of seconds. Again, we can't see you, so please feel free to share honestly. We also know that we're coming to the close of 2016. 2017 is right around the corner. And what happens so often at this time of year is we all say, you know, I'm going to make it a New Year's resolution. January 1st, or in this case this year, January 2nd, right? Because I think the 1st is a Sunday. If it were a Wednesday, we'd say we'll do it on Thursday. It's one of those things we continue to put off. But yet here we can see how important it is to get started with self-care now. And I'm thrilled to see that so many in our audience actually feel the exact same way. Self-care is so much more than a buzzword. Yes, at times it is bubble baths, chocolate, and wine, or time in nature, but more importantly, it is a practice that we should approach daily with mindfulness. I'd like to thank you all again very much for your time today. And if anyone has any questions, we do have a few minutes. We got through this. I'd like to keep my webinars in that 40 to 45 minute range because I know everyone has other things they could be doing. But again, we thank you for making time for yourself a priority and being here today. But if anyone has any questions they'd like to share, we'll take a look at those. Oh, we had some great comments. Someone talking about having family to hold us accountable for lack of self-care. That's a really good point, right? Family, close friends, even coworkers, right? We all can help be and establish some accountability partners there. Thank you so much for sharing that. Does anyone else have any comments or questions that they'd like to share before we go off and you can get on with your day? All right, well, it looks like everyone is good. As Agata said, we will send you the PowerPoint. It doesn't have a lot of the things that we talked about, but maybe the pictures will trigger some things for you. My name and contact information are right here. So thank you again for your time today, and thank you all very much for the work that you do. Know how inspiring it is to those of us in the coalitions and how much it makes us want to continue to do our work with all of you so that our coalitions grow stronger and we can continue to give support to you and those that we serve. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for an amazing self-care presentation. I hope that we all can take a couple minutes and write and start our plan of how we're going to start doing self-care every day. All the tips were fantastic. And I have to admit that I was actually shaking my head and doing all the nods as well as she was presenting to us. So I just would like to add that if you can please, at the end of this webinar, fill out the polls and let us know what you would like to see for 2017 in kind of webinars what kind of support you need in that aspect. We will strongly appreciate it. We wish you all happy holidays on behalf of CCASA staff, and look forward to have an amazing 2017 for us, and to keep our spirits high. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll keep in touch with all of you.